Welcome to episode 5 of the Exit Strategy Podcast. I'm here with Paul Tran. Paul, you're the CEO and founder of Manscaped. Manscaped, Native started in 2015. Manscaped started around then. Manscaped sells products that helps men groom their groins. Is that right?
That's perfectly right. There was white space.
And some of the products that you sell, just so people have clarity, are the Lawnmower, which helps men trim their pubes, deodorant for your balls, like a foot odor product as well. What's the foot odor product called?
It's called the foot duster.
It's called the Foot Duster. Okay. And you guys have a really cheeky sense of humor. When people go onto Manscaped or look at Manscaped's past, I've read some of your taglines. They're fantastic. One is, I remember one because I was reading it. It says, "When you trim the hedges, the tree stands taller." Who came up with that?
Well, I mean that's true, right?
That's
I mean
absolutely true. Who came up with that tagline?
we have a really talented marketing team. Where we're just it evolved as I can't remember where that tagline came from, but we just have a really talented marketing team that comes up with these really catchy sayings all the time.
Yeah, that's certainly really catchy. One of the questions I was thinking about when I was doing some research about Manscaped is how often are men trimming their hedges? Do you guys have any idea? Do you guys survey your customers about that kind of information, or what's
We
it
do
look
we
like?
do
What is it?
survey our customers, and it's actually it turned out to be much more frequent than we thought. A lot of men, or of course, in anything there's a bell curve, right?
Sure.
Where the bell curve, the highest frequency is around once a week to once every 14 days. So it's between 7 and 14 days is when somebody maintenance their bush.
And what's the other end of the bell curve? Is the other end once every 5 years?
The other end, of course, is it also follows the age gap, right? When you're much older, less incentivized to do it, so it's like never, right? So that's the other side of the bell curve.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that I guess who are buying these products? Is it men who are like, hey, I want to make myself look better and my tree to stand taller, or is it women who are like, I'm tired of looking at my husband or boyfriend or partners looking like this, and so he needs to trim.
Well, see, we actually have a pretty eclectic mix between men and women. During the holidays, we open marketing much more to women, so we have more women customers than the rest of the year. But really, the truth is that if you haven't groomed down there, you don't know what it feels like. Like if after you've groomed down there, you feel it's refreshing. So we've seen that men like that actually start like really enjoy it. It's like we say we got when your hair is really long, and then you finally cut your hair. It feels really relaxing, really cool. And I think men are starting to enjoy that. It feels fresher. It's not as damp. I think you start getting used to that feeling, and it becomes just a normal thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right about a lot of that. I know, when I shave sometimes, or at least get a barber to cut my beard, afterwards I just feel like I'm a new human being and feel great. I don't know what it is about that. I still don't understand what psychological impact that is. Where I'm like, okay, this guy's just cut my beard. It looks good, but now I feel like I'm a newly reborn person.
Yeah, it's just and that's what we strive for. I mean, as the essence of the company, at the end of the day, we just want you to feel better. Like the way that we think about it is life is pretty rough already. There's so much to do.
Yeah.
There's so many responsibilities. We just want to make your life just a little more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And that's really at the end of the day, that's our mission.
Yeah. And so there's a subscription element to the business as well. Aside from like, I imagine like the hero product that you guys have is the lawnmower, like what trims hedges. Is that right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you think about it, so the way I like to explain it is that when you look at the female body, you realize you start from head to toe. If you're analyzing, right, you realize that there's a product and a brand for every single female care and need you can think of. When you go to the male body, you switch your attention to the male body. You start with your head. You got your Gillette, your Dollar Shave
Sure.
Club, your Harry's, right? You go down to the torso. You got Native. You got Old Spice. When you get down to the groin, there's nobody playing in the groin, right?
Yeah.
That is total empty white space. And we got lucky and fortunate, and we recognized that 3 years ago, and we were able to capitalize on that. We were able to attain an amazing name. So Manscaped, right now, um, I mean, we define the category of manscaping, right? So that Manscaped defines that category, and we totally own this category. And what's really important for us is to create the best products. Like where the way
Yeah.
that we think about our mission and our mandate is that we don't optimize for anything other than quality. So we're not optimizing for price. Like we're not the cheapest products. We are the
Yeah.
best products. So that's kind of how, because there's a lot of products out there, right? I mean,
Sure.
from everything from the low end to high end, but we want to focus on is creating the absolute best products, and that starts
And
with our
so
lawnmower.
talking about the lawnmower, which is like a trimmer for your pubes, really, and a fantastic name. Would love to delve more into the name of Manscaped and lawnmower in a minute, but like, you're on the lawnmower 3.0. How did you guys decide what went from lawnmower 2.0 to 3.0, and what are you going to put in lawnmower 4.0? Like, is there customer feedback involved in that? Is there like what's going on for you guys to make those types of decisions?
Absolutely. So we have a Facebook group, and I'm going to plug it here. It's the Facebook Ballers group, and it's a VIP group, and it's invite only. You have to ask to join. But this group is for our closest, best customers that are interactive with us. And when I say best, it's not on a monetary value, like how much you buy. It's just people that like the brand, that want to
Yeah.
interact with myself and our executive team and our product development team. And so we have, I think about close to 2 or 3 thousand people in there, that are really interactive, that they love to test products. So we have a great group of core, Manscaped fans that we
Sure.
can test new products. But one of the biggest things that we do is, our blade has what we call skin safe technology. And skin safe makes it really difficult for you to, excuse my French, nick your balls, right?
Yeah.
Um, because if you've ever nicked yourself down there, it is the most horrible feeling. That
I
area,
think
it
that's what everyone
expands,
is
it
afraid of before
retracts.
they start manscaping. Is like, what
That is
happens
the
if
number
I
one
mess
fear.
this up? Yeah.
That is the number one fear. And I can tell you, it bleeds a lot. It expands, it retracts, it hurts. It hurts all day. So it's a
Yeah.
real pain point. So our blades, it's the only blade out there specifically engineered to trim your groin, because it's not like any other area of your face, right? Like if you're talking about your beard, it's really taut. Your face is really taut. It's
Yeah.
really easy to trim, right? This is
Sure.
loose skin with
Yeah.
hair on it, so it's not the same experience as trimming your beard. It's much more difficult. So go back to your question. Now, how do we determine the difference between the 2.0 and the 3.0? It's just innovating. In the product pipeline, it might take like a year to 18 months to engineer a great product. So we have multiple products lined up. Like we're designing the 4.0 at the same time we're designing the 5.0, and we're putting
Yeah.
thought into the 6.0, because we're a hardware company in addition to soft goods, right? So we have our own R&D lab that we built out that does all the soft goods, like all the formulations, the ball deodorant and everything else that we're going to get into. But on a hardware side, we have our own in-house industrial designers, material experts, and engineers that design these and design and think through the problems that you have. So when we developed the 2.0, that was really our first mass product with Skin Safe. Um, And then the 3.0 was an evolution of the 2.0. It had a light in there because we
Yeah.
realized like even if your bathroom is really lit, there
Yeah.
are shadows. So like the light, it seems like, oh, we thought about it. Is it a gimmick? If we put a light on there, would it be deemed as a gimmick? And then we actually put a light on a prototype. Like, oh, this is actually really useful because like
Yeah.
you can because you need to see down there. Like it's not the
Sure.
same experience because you got to see down there. So putting a light on there was made it into the 3.0. The port 4.0, I don't want to talk about all the different features, but
Yeah.
we're really innovating on this experience, and we don't think that there's many companies that really looked at groin trimming and how to innovate in that area while making it safe, easy, and enjoyable.
And so going back to this Facebook group, are you going to like reach out to the Facebook group and say, hey guys, we have the 4.0. Does anyone want to try a couple samples and give us your feedback before we finalize this production? Is that how it works? Or like, before you
Absolutely,
launch the
that works,
4.0?
and that works all the time. So that cycle is much more frequent with our soft goods products. So all of our ball deodorant and all the products that we're testing in the pipeline now, that goes out, that gets tested internally. Goes all through all the stability testing,
Yeah.
and all of the employees use it, and then we expand it out to our VIP ballers group.
And then talk to me a little bit about R&D. It's really amazing that you can sort of have that R&D in-house as an independent company. We never had that as native as an independent company. And even once we joined Procter and Gamble, like we did some R&D internally, but most of the R&D we did like with third-party manufacturers. How big is this R&D group? I haven't heard of like a startup sort of thinking about R&D as or like, early on or within the first 5 years of their existence, like you guys are doing. How big is that R&D group?
So that goes back to a firm belief of mine. I've always kind of thought, I have always thought it was really important not only to go wide but to also go deep. And what that means is you gotta know a lot of different things, but you just can't be what was there's a saying. What was it saying? A jack of all trades but master of none. Right? I
Yeah.
don't think an entrepreneur can be like that. I think to be really successful, you not only have to go wide, but you also have to go deep. You got to be a master of a lot of things. So
Yeah.
with that belief, we made sure that everything was done in house. Like we never hired an agency, and we don't use any agencies for anything. All video production is done in house. All media buying is done in house. R&D is done in house.
Oh my
Product
God.
development,
So no
everything.
agencies. How
No
so like
agencies.
the technology that you guys build out, you guys have your own developers. When you guys launch a TV commercial, you have your own in-house production agency make it. You have your own in-house creative agency decide what it is, and then your own in-house like agency or your own in-house employees
To buy it.
cut it up as well and edit.
Yep,
That's
cut it up,
insane.
edit,
How big
and
is
buy
the
it.
entire team then?
Right now, we're seeing about 72 employees, so we're not that
Wow.
big.
Okay. Yeah, that is not that big, and pretty amazing based on like the amount of content that I see coming out of Manscaped. So you guys are certainly productive at creating content. And when did you guys hire your first R&D employee then?
Well, I mean, just like many other startups in the CPG space, we use contract manufacturers. So we use a third party lab to create our first products. But I think in about a year, probably 14 months ago, was when we started really building out our own R&D lab,
Wow.
and
Okay.
hired our first R&D research chemist. And we knew that we had to retain this knowledge and really understand it, from top down. So having it in-house, we got to iterate very quickly. And we didn't like this, let's change it. And so we're like what would take weeks from working with a lab, because we work
Yeah.
with labs before. You got to send them a brief, they send you samples,
Sure.
and then you send them back and forth. It just
Yeah.
the cycles are just way too long, right?
Yeah.
So for us, having a team that we can work with hand in hand, is it was just really accelerated that.
Gotcha. Okay, let's start talking a little bit more about like the early days of Manscaped. So before this R&D team exists, before you guys are sort of developing Lawnmower 4.0, you guys are working on the original products. Manscaped gets on Shark Tank at some point. And at some point, like you're on Shark Tank, you're working on the original marketing for the company. Do you guys call the first product you release a Lawnmower 1.0?
It was called the Lawnmower. Yeah.
It was called the Lawnmower. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And like, how do you guys? Tell me a little bit more about how this marketing strategy developed. Because certainly, like, I think everyone is familiar with the Dollar Shave Club, commercial or initial video that really launched that brand, and how spectacularly successful it was. You know how Michael Dubin saying, "You don't need Roger Federer to endorse your razor blade. Why are you paying Roger Federer to shave?" How did you guys get started in terms of your marketing strategy?
So, we first started we knew that this is something that was good for men, right? It helped with being, it's hygienic and it's cleanliness, right?
Yeah.
So we started off with messaging in that way. Like, dudes, you guys should do this because it's good for you. You'll feel better. And none of that resonated. Right.
How long did you try that type of marketing for that was like more serious and less cheeky?
Probably for 3 months.
And how much money did you have to spend in those 3 months to be like, this isn't working out? If you had to ballpark it, what is it, $10,000 or $100,000?
No, I think we spent probably $50,000 on marketing to realize that didn't work.
And then, So then tell me about the evolution. Then what happened?
Yeah, so then, being scientific, it just didn't gravitate to anyone. So then we basically changed gears and said, we knew that there was a market for this and there was white space. We knew that we had to crack it and figure out how to communicate with men, because communicating, like in my past, I've had startups that focus primarily on women in skincare, right, and perfumes and colognes and even in SaaS and other things, right? But we needed to understand that we had to get to that tipping point of understanding how to communicate with men in this way. And we realized that, dudes aren't talking about this. Like, they don't stand around the water cooler and be like, hey, your hair looks so great today. What'd you use? Was it a volumizer? Like, what kind of conditioner are you using? Dudes don't do that, right?
Yeah.
They don't talk about skincare. They don't talk about deodorants or hygiene, right? But they'll talk about funny things, right? Things that were hilarious that entertains them. So then we started creating our first video. I remember was a video because it was towards the end of the year, and we had produced this video of Santa Claus trimming. So it was in an apartment, and Ryan Fiore, our VP of marketing, was the one that actually dressed up as Santa. And he's got his Santa pants down on his ankles, and the camera is just panning, and it looks like snow falling down, right? And then as you pan out, you see Santa's legs. And as it's snowing, you hear this like buzzing sound. I was like, right? So you're like, oh, it's kind of snowing indoors, because it was like inside a house. So as you're, and then we had another person was like, Catherine was sprinkling, these fake white hairs that onto the ground, and we were pulling back the camera that was panning back and panning out, and you can see Santa's legs. So that was kind of the first video that we shot.
That was the first time you moved from was that the first move you had towards the cheeky sense of humor, from being serious about like, hey, this is good for you, it's going to make you feel better?
Yeah, that was the first one.
Okay. Let me talk a little bit more about the $50,000 you spent that didn't work well. Where did you end up spending that $50,000 over those 3 months to be like, let's test to see if this, if this concept has any legs? Because, you have a product that consumers want. You're trying to find the right marketing channels and the right marketing, messaging to go out with that. That marketing messaging is what's failing. Where did you spend that $50,000?
Look, I think this answer is going to be kind of a de facto answer across many startups, especially in
Yeah.
the early days. You spend it on Facebook, and you spend it on Google, and that is just the
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I do want to say about that is like all you entrepreneurs out there, don't don't get a false sense of confidence that your cap is so low, that you're doing so well on Facebook that this is going to scale infinitely. Because you
Yeah.
start running those numbers, right? You're like on Facebook, like, oh man, my cap is $20. If I dump $200 million into marketing, I'm gonna make
Yeah.
this much. It's
Yes. It
there
doesn't
is
work that way.
definitely it doesn't work that way. There is a Facebook and a Google wall, and I'll use it in different Facebook ceiling. You're gonna hit that ceiling, and it's gonna hurt. And a lot of entrepreneurs need to realize that early on. We were really fortunate that we realized that early on, because you got to think about it. Facebook is really good at targeting. I mean, Facebook and Google, these guys are data powerhouses. They know how to target and find the right buyers for you. But if your market, if your total addressable market is this big,
Yeah.
right? You're going to hit that ceiling pretty quickly. So you
Sure.
have to really think about how to broaden your product appeal, and into to make sure that you are addressing a very large total addressable market. Like your addressable market, like eventually you're going to have to market to men or women or both. Like
Yeah.
if you're still doing like fine-tuned targeting,
Yeah.
lookalikes, and you're
Yeah.
trying to extract every value, that's you can't scale it.
I think that look, what you said definitely has a ton of is absolutely correct. Like at Native, we saw a $2 CAC in 2015, a $4 CAC in 2016, a $6.50 CAC in 2017. So one, even looking at that $2 CAC, it basically more than tripled over the course of 2 years. And we saw those, like there were multiple ceilings we got to. There was a ceiling at $200,000. There was a ceiling at $500,000. There was a much denser ceiling at $1 million. And trying to push against those ceilings took a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of like right messaging. And you're absolutely right from an audience targeting perspective as well. Like lookalike audiences absolutely crushed it for us for a really long period of time until we hit one of those ceilings. Like, we used a lookalike audience of 1%, which looked like, 2 million people. And then, you start expanding that to 2% and 3%. And then all of a sudden lookalikes don't work anymore. And then at some point you're just like, I'm targeting all women. And then you're like, I'm targeting all humans that exist on Earth now.
You
Because in
have to.
reality, like not everyone is going to buy something when they see a Facebook ad, right? Like, Facebook does a great job of segmenting their audiences. They're like, they have, let's say they have 300 million people in the United States. Something like 80% of the people that are on Facebook generally won't click ads and make a purchase from it. And so everybody is competing for those 20% of people who do buy things online. And so even if your total addressable market is this big, in reality, online it's this big because, there's just fewer people buying things that are online.
Absolutely. You got to get to, if you want to build a truly scalable business, you got to eventually figure out how to get off of platforms. You got to
Yeah.
be able to get off of online. I mean, online is always a part of your marketing mix, your marketing strategy, right? But it should never be 100%. Like as soon as you can, you're gonna go through withdrawal symptoms of getting off platforms, but you got to start diversifying your marketing, or it's just never going to scale. Like I mean,
Yeah.
for us, we're everywhere now. We have figured out how to, and this is where we're very fortunate. We have a really talented marketing team, but we got off of Facebook and Google probably last year. And when I say off, I mean we really diversified from it.
Yeah.
One of our big channels is still YouTube, right? Because a lot of people spend their time there. We're one of the biggest spenders on Hulu, right? We have a massive TV budget. UFC sponsorship. I mean, we sponsor the UFC, where we haven't really announced it yet, but we're going to be one of the exclusive sponsors of the San Francisco 49ers. So
Wow.
like
What does that mean? If you're an exclusive sponsor for the 49ers, what does that mean?
that means that I think that next year when you go to Levi Stadium and you go into any of the bathrooms, you're going to see our our signage on top of all the urinals.
Wow.
Um, that's gonna be. I mean, the great thing is those some things we cracked, right? It's like
Yeah.
how many companies out there can actually buy that ad the ad unit, right? Like who's gonna buy that ad unit? Like Apple's not gonna buy ad unit on
Sure.
top of a urinal, right? But it
Yeah.
fits so well for us, and it fits our cheeky tone that it works for us, right? So like, what are you doing right there? You're like you're thinking about it, right? So when you see an ad that says has a finger point down with a trimmer and says "Got Bush," you're like, hmm, you're standing right there. You can kind of evaluate and think about that.
Okay, I want to talk much more about this. I want to talk a little bit about the past as well. But before we get off this topic, how much, ballpark the cost to me for a San Francisco 49ers sponsorship? Is it six figures or seven figures? Or
Um,
five figures?
oh, it's definitely not five figures.
Yeah, I know it's. I can't imagine it's five figures. So give me a ballpark because like let me give you a couple examples. We interviewed Kara from Hint Water like a couple weeks ago, and she told me how she bought a Super Bowl commercial for under $1 million. We interviewed Andrew, who's the CEO of this company called Hims, which is like a men's sexual wellness company, and he bought urinals over the over Giant Stadium. Give me an idea of what, like, just ballpark the cost for me. You don't need to give me the exact number. Is it high six figures, low six figures, mid six figures? Is it seven figures? Give me some. At Native, we were running, a very lean budget, but by the time we were, doing over $100 million, we had a pretty sizable marketing budget. We were spending money on TV ads, on billboards in New York City. We're going to spend $1 million in 2020, or we were going to before COVID really hit, on subway ads in New York City in 2020. And that included like station takeovers, which cost like a very low six figures. And that included some, photos and subway trains, which cost like about $40,000. What does a 49ers exclusive sponsorship get you? Do you have a booth? Are you going to go to games? And give me the price, or give me a ballpark of the price.
I would say it's in the six figures. Not to the seven figures yet, but definitely in the six figures.
Okay. And does it include a bunch of tickets? Or am I going to see you at a bunch of 49ers games?
Yeah, I mean, 49ers are just a phenomenal team management wise. They're
Yeah.
so awesome. We got to go to the Super Bowl with them. We were at the NFC playoffs in their box. It was
Yeah.
an
Okay.
amazing
Fantastic.
experience.
Okay, let's go. Let's rewind a little bit and go back to the Santa Claus commercial. So you guys have, it's been 3 months. The seriousness, it wasn't working. You were spending on Facebook and Google, burned $50,000. Didn't love what happened. You've sort of pivoted now. You're running this Santa Claus commercial, or like you've got the Santa Claus video. What do you do with it? It's really funny. It's cheeky. It's super interesting, but it's time relevant because it's winter. Nobody's ever heard of Santa Claus trimming his pubes, but that's really funny. What do you do with that commercial, and when do you realize that cheeky sense of humor makes sense?
So I would answer that in two parts. So the first part is once again, you run it on Facebook and Google, right? That's the first thing. So you
Yeah,
so you you run it you run it on Facebook, you run it on YouTube, um, and what you're tracking for at that time is like how much am I paying per CPM and per click, right? Like what is it costing me to deliver traffic to the website,
yeah,
right? And then when they get to the website, then now you have to make sure that you're really observant and performing a lot of conversion rate optimization, right? You got to make sure that your that lead closes when they get to the site, right? You present them with the right offer. So the first part of me answering your question is, we got that video, we're testing, we're running it on Facebook, we're running it on YouTube, and we're tracking how much it's costing us. And remember, at that time, we weren't broad yet. We're still like, okay, we're gonna advertise to men that's 18 to 25. It's gonna run
yeah,
this video with this call to action, and then there's we're running 35 to 40 with this video or this different call to action, and then it's all gonna drive to the website. So then of course you're calculating, oh, wait, what are my CPMs, what are my CPAs, um, and more important, my CPCs. And then when they get to the site, that's when you really start doing a lot of work, like offer testing. Like what do I need to offer? What do I need to say? Because early days, really really early days, what you're looking for are signals, right? And you have to be really in tune with your entire marketing strategy to understand these signals, right? And what I mean by signals is early on, I set up three pillars of what is important to our male audience, and this is very early on, right? Um, it was, when you trim the bush, the tree stands taller, right? That was an important motivation factor for them,
Yeah.
right? Um, Use the right tools for the job, right? So if you're gonna do this, don't hurt yourself, because
Yeah.
like that was a really important marketing message that really got them, that really got you to understand it. So we distilled down, this really big concept of, don't hey guys, don't cut yourself, because that's crude to say, right? So it really just became, if use the right tools for the job, right? So when you trim the hedges, the tree stands taller. It tells you, okay, well then that works, right? You kind of equate and you kind of understand that there's a benefit, right? Outside of you just feeling good, because for us, we knew that ultimately we wanted to be a much bigger brand that encompasses, masculinity and, empowerment for men. We didn't want to just be a growing business. Right? That was never our intention. We wanted to empower men, but to get there, we had to figure out what men were receptive to, right? So that's where that, if you trim the bushes, the tree stands taller. Men got that right away, right? They
Yeah.
got they got why they should do that, and how they would, uh, receive this power, or this not this power, but receive this feeling of, empowerment, right? And then after that, it was all about use the right tools for the job, because, don't cut yourself, don't hurt yourself. But
Sure.
that was the big learning that cost probably 200,000, quarter of a million, to really learn. And it's really kind of philosophical when you talk about marketing in this way, but like, to spend that much money just to learn these two key things. um, and most people, like a lot of people, like, that are not marketers, they're not really in tune with their audience. That might just pass them, like, then they'll think, oh, I didn't really get that. But we tested a lot of marketing message and realized that those two things combined together really resonated, really got men to understand why you should do this, the need, and why you should use dedicated tools that we created, to solve this problem. So I think any startup trying to build a brand, and not just like a SaaS platform where you're just selling utility, right? Your SaaS platform, you're selling utility. This, we solve your problem like this, right? But to really build a brand in the CPG, a highly competitive CPG space, you have to distill your marketing message to be so fine tuned, that it really resonates with a broad audience.
So you tested. Can you give me the examples of so the two that worked were tree stands taller, use the right tools for the job. What were some of the marketing messages you thought might work and ended up not working? Do you remember any of those?
God, I can't remember. There were so many. Um, we had a bunch that there was, I think it was like 10 on that made it to the short list of, of it was like, feel fresher or something like that, right? Was one
Yeah,
of them. um you know um Make sure you're clean and ready all the time, and it was a bunch of different,
that's
um
funny.
along that vein.
Yeah,
But it just didn't resonate. It was just like,
sure.
it just didn't click with dudes. And that's what you're searching for as marketers, trying to market any product. That's what you're searching for. You're searching for with this, how to sell your product in one simple statement, for that your audience understands it and sees the need instantly.
Yeah. So you spend $200,000 sort of testing that messaging on Facebook and Google. Yeah, I really liked what you said earlier, which was once you get people to your website, you have to like optimize offers as well. I feel like too often people are like, "Great, what is my CPA?" And my CPA is how good is my Facebook ad? And what they don't look at is how good is my landing page. Am I convincing people once they get to my landing page that they should buy this product, that it's a good value, and that they should buy it now and not 2 weeks from now? And I feel like those are two sides of the same coin, and both are going to dramatically impact CPA, right? Like you can say, "Hey, tree stands taller." On your Facebook ad, and like the flip side of that coin, the landing page can be use the right tools for the job. But if the landing page is like buy this trimmer because your balls aren't the same as your face, it could be a very different type
Hmm.
of CPA.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's see that's where I go back to, it's difficult to it's difficult to hire an agency unless you got a lot of money, right? And unless you're venture funded, and that we weren't at that time, you know, and, and so it wasn't unless you had a lot of money, you wouldn't be able to buy enough time of an agency to
Yeah.
actually come up with these things. So if you're an entrepreneur and you think you have a really phenomenal product, you spent years building this product, like I would say, take that leap. Like don't be shy because in my core, like half of my career I was a technologist. Like I didn't do CPG.
Yeah.
I wasn't a branding guy. I wasn't a marketer. I was a technologist. I built SaaS platforms and software. So I would say that don't be shy. Take that risk and do the marketing yourself because you're the only one that really understands the value of your product. Like to try to communicate that with an agency, and it's really really hit or miss unless you've got a lot of money and you're paying for a lot of their time. It just I have seen it not work out very well.
Couldn't agree more. When Native was growing, the entire time we were an independent company, I ran all paid ads. After we sold the business, I still ran paid ads until probably like 6 months ago or something to that effect, or like maybe 8 months ago at this point, because I was just like, this is the backbone of the business. This is how we're growing. This is one of the reasons we're growing very quickly, and I don't want to outsource that to somebody else who by necessity, is an agency by definition, and there will be agency costs as a result of that. They won't care as much. They don't care about the business. They won't be looking at the metrics as quickly as I am or as frequently as I am, and they won't be iterating on different tests on messages. Like if this is a skill that I have, if this is a skill that's important to the company, I should get good at this skill, or I should at least understand this skill. And so one of the things that you mentioned was you need a lot of money in order to hire these agencies in order to get them to do good work. Going back to what you guys did, you guys spent $50,000 and it didn't really work out with the serious messaging. $200,000 and you realized what messaging did work. How were you able to afford this stuff? Because early on you were bootstrapped.
Yeah, I mean, we were bootstrapped and we grew organically for a very, very long time. Um, and how we were, through prior successes, you gotta
Yeah.
gamble and reinvest. I would think that's the best way to talk about it. And you know, fundraising and spending investor dollars, it has its price. There is a cost to that, right? And I think very often that gets overshadowed by the glitz and glamour of fundraising and closing around. Um, and that's where I would advise entrepreneurs that closing, because right now when you read the news, right, like every closes around and everyone's cheering. There's a lot of PR around it. It's like, dude, that's just the beginning. Like you don't know how much those investors are going to be on your ass all the time. How to spend that money, and then you get into a point where you're starting to spend frivolously.
Yeah.
It's like I guarantee you, if we had $1 million in the bank, we wouldn't have spent $200,000. We would have spent half a million testing,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's a cyclical trap to raise money way too early, because number one, that's when you lose the most amount of the most of your company, right? Is
Sure.
early on.
Most
Um,
dilution. Yeah.
the most amount of dilution. You look back and you're like, oh my God, that was crazy, right? But
Yeah.
then, but then like it makes you not as strict with yourself and with your budget.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with all of that. We raised like $50,000 and it was a great sign that we were onto a successful business. We raised that at Native. We raised $50,000 at like a $5 million valuation, probably 4 months into the business, and then another 250K maybe within the first year. And those were, the reason that I did that early on, the business was working. I wasn't like, in reality, we didn't even need that 250K. I was just like, I want to make sure that there's external validation that what I'm doing here is right. I think that was the primary reason. And the secondary reason was that I was like, I'm in San Francisco and this is what everyone here does. Everyone raises money as a sign of success. There's this great tweet I saw. I don't remember who tweeted it. And someone's like, raise $10 million and you get invited to every party in San Francisco. Sell your business and make $10 million. Crickets. Like people somehow celebrate the fundraising more than they do actually the successful exits, which doesn't make any sense. What scale were you at when you did raise your first few checks? I want to make sure there's some disclosure here. I was one of those checks at some point. What scale were you at when you raised those first few checks?
Well, those first few checks, we were beyond the eight figures, right? When by the time we raised those first few checks, and they were in.
When you say you were beyond eight figures, you mean you were like north of $10 million, not north
Yeah,
of $100 million.
correct,
Okay.
correct, yeah. And those few checks, you know, the impetus behind those was to bring on talent like yourself, right? I mean, we called it a sweetheart round, or a sweetheart note, because we wanted to bring on amazing talent. So there weren't any VCs in that note. It was everyone that was pretty much hand selected from a group of friends,
Yeah.
So like yourself, like Nick from Thrive, and like from just amazing individuals that could really contribute to the business, that have the experience, and that we wanted to actually call and talk to. Like I'll call you when you're in China, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about things. So
Yeah.
um, so that was the reason why we raised, and it wasn't because of
Yeah.
need.
And has that been helpful? We raised money. We raised $500,000 at Native. Um, about half the investors, I would say, were really helpful. Like people that I could call and be like, "Hey, this is a problem I'm having. Have you had it before?" We like Nick was the first episode of this podcast. He actually helped me with a bunch of trademark stuff, or he at least made me think about trademark stuff early on. One of our investors was an executive at Facebook who was really helpful at helping us just get access to the right people at Facebook that we needed. Another was just like a calming voice who was a VC and had sort of seen a bunch of things happen in San Francisco, and so was like when I called him up, he's like, his name's Paul Ferris from Azure, and he's like, "Hey Moiz, this is how to think about things. You're panicking too much." Have the investors that you sort of let in, those sweethearts, have those sweethearts been helpful?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you nailed it on the head with about 50%. Right?
Okay.
It's like about like even when you hand select
Yeah.
these group of investors,
Yeah.
like everyone's got their own lives, right? Everyone has their own
Yeah.
focus. So of everyone you hand select, only 50% will be really valuable. So
Yeah.
imagine if you don't hand select them, and it's just a group of a bunch of different people. Like the value out of that will be dramatically lower, right? So yeah, 50% I can call anytime. And I want to say this, you got to manage expectations, right? Everyone's got their own lives, everyone's got their own jobs, right? Just because they
Sure.
invest in your company doesn't mean that you have 10 hours a week of their time, right?
Sure.
You got to manage expectations, right? So it's really key decisions. Hey, I'm going through this. What do you think? You don't need manufacturers in here or whatever. It's like send out a broad email, and hey, anybody can help me with connecting with this person, that person. That's where you can get really rapid responses, and they can be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, let's do a little bit of fast forwarding. You've raised this money from a bunch of sweethearts, including myself. You've spent $250,000 on Facebook and Google with the Santa Claus commercial, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to talk about anything. I'm going to be less serious and be more cheeky with my humor because that's what's resonating with consumers. At what point do you start getting off Facebook and Google? Like, I think one of the most impressive things I found about Manscaped is the diversity of channel acquisition. Like YouTube is a really hard channel for people to scale. So like, Hulu, we've tried on Hulu, like when Native has been on Hulu ads, wasn't nearly as successful as you guys. How do you guys test? Well, first help me understand your largest channels of customer acquisition. Is it YouTube? Is it still Facebook? Or like, what is the largest channel still?
Well, it depends. I mean, Facebook and Google is still a very large channel, and
Yeah.
between YouTube, between the, I'm sorry, not YouTube, Google and Facebook is a large channel, right? Because Facebook encompasses both of their assets. It's Facebook and Instagram is a very very large channel. Because can't forget about Instagram. Right? Everyone talks about Facebook,
Sure.
but Instagram is a huge channel. So that's where a lot of spend goes. The other spend is on Google. Of course, there's AdWords, right? There is
Yeah.
GDN. There
Yeah.
is so many different ad units that you guys have, like, most startup entrepreneurs haven't even considered, right, on the Google platform. And then there's YouTube, which drives a tremendous amount of traffic and has, I should say, tremendous amounts of views, not necessarily traffic, okay? Because there's so much inventory on YouTube. It's so hard to crack. Like, YouTube is so hard to crack. Um,
Okay, let me ask it in a different way. If you had to choose, if all of these channels were going to be regulated by the FTC and all of them were going to be shut down except one, which one would you want to continue to exist?
it depends on when. It depends on when. Right now, I would say Google.
Today, yeah. You'd say what?
Today's
You'd say
Google.
which?
Today would be
Google.
Google.
Okay. And then help me understand a little bit more about YouTube. Are you guys doing pre-roll ads or are you guys doing like influencer-based ads on YouTube?
We're doing pre-roll ads. We're doing influencer ads. We're doing user-generated content. Um, we're doing. I mean, We have a team of 5 in our influencer department, and all they do is work with influencers. So it gets to a point where you have to keep grinding, and there's a tipping point where you're like, everything starts to gel because all of these channels lift everything, right? Like, you can't just be on Facebook and be successful. You got to be on Facebook, on Google, on Hulu, on everything else to actually scale massively. Um, so we realized that on very, very early on. So this year is a big push for us to kind of be be everywhere, including billboards. And we got like 20 billboards out there now. Urinal ads, like UFC fights. We were at the Conor McGregor fight. We had a car in NASCAR. So
Wow.
yeah.
So tell me how you structure your team to handle all that then. Do you guys have like is one person that's working on YouTube also working on Instagram, or is there somebody who's dedicated to YouTube, somebody who's dedicated to UFC fights, and somebody who's dedicated to NASCAR?
So there's an out of home director, Joey Kovac. He's just phenomenal. And you really, I think the way that, so to answer the first part of your question is, how do you structure? Um, you got to find the best people. The best people will bring in the best people, will bring in the best people. So it's so important as an entrepreneur, to build the team, right? When one of your primary jobs as a CEO is to build the team, right? To
Yeah.
lead the vision and build the team. So bringing in the right generals, the right key people in the leadership team will automatically start to bring in the right people on the next layer, right?
Yeah.
So, Ryan and I have been working together. Ryan, as our VP of marketing, has been working together for almost a decade now. He brought in Joey Kovac, which is phenomenal. Joey, did a lot of the marketing for Movement before they exited from the ground up. Then he brought in Nate Singer, to handle Google and YouTube, and then we brought in Natalie Hopman to handle radio. And then she was phenomenal. She got us on Howard Stern and all these amazing podcasts. Um, and then they brought in Lauren on the marketing side, and Lauren does all of the influencers, built out the influencer team.
So it sounds like you have directors for each channel, though, as opposed like you have a YouTube somebody who manages YouTube, somebody who manages out of home, somebody who manages Instagram and
Yes,
Facebook, and that's sort of how
yes,
you've structured it under a VP of marketing.
correct.
And
But I
then how
would,
do
I
you
would
structure?
for a startup though. But for a startup though, I don't want you to think that that's what you need to start, right? You don't need that to start. You got to do everything on your
Definitely,
own, right?
yeah,
Like in the beginning, like Ryan and I were on YouTube every single day, like clicking through, refreshing like 1,000 times a day to see metrics, right? That's how you
yeah.
start. And then when you reach critical mass, that's when you bring in someone to handle. Where you go on and you pioneer the next channel.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to mention. Like, I feel like a lot of people want to be in 7 different marketing channels when they launch their business, and it's hard to be an expert. I've rarely met people who are good at Facebook and Google ads, and people are like, "Yeah, I'm going to try and run Facebook, Google, Snap, Pinterest, and TikTok ads when I launch my business," and I'm like, you're not going to be able to measure, like you're going to forget everything that you've ever done. By the time you're looking at TikTok ads, which is your fifth channel today, you're going to forget what your Facebook ads look like. And so it's really hard to be a master of so many channels right out of the gate. I'm a big fan of sort of going deep on one or two channels, or three if you are able to, and becoming a master of those, and then hiring people once you're sort of able to, once you understand the metrics behind those, and you've built some sort of critical mass and know how to, like, you understand the next 3 to 4 months of the trajectory of that channel.
Mm-hmm. You got to master it. You got to master it before you move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do you think about budgets when you're doing this? So is there like a quarterly meeting for budgets or an annual meeting for budgets where you're like, okay, influencer team, you get 12% of our budget, radio team, you get 10% of our budget? How do you guys think, or are you like sort of like, you know what, influencers, we're willing to spend up to $30 CAC, spend as much as you can until you hit $30. How do you think about that?
I mean, now we are. I mean, to be honest, now we are, right? Like we're much more systematic now. We're much more organized. But the first 2 years, let's be honest, nobody gets set budgets in the first 2 years. You're still learning so much. You're still growing so much, and it's still so fluid that, like, dude, we just launched this channel with this video. The CPA is still gotta go balls out. Right?
And that's the only thing that matters over the course of the next 8 weeks is this channel. Everyone else, be quiet. This is the channel that's going to make our business now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
really funny.
And so, I don't want to. I want to make sure that the listeners and the entrepreneurs out there don't don't think that you need to have budgets in place on that. In the early days, you just got to make it work. That's all you got to do. You got to make it work. That's all you got to focus on.
Yeah, in the early days, it's always audibles, right? Like every day is a new fire that you have to put out. And the rare days where you don't have fires and can sort of focus on marketing channels, you got to go with just what's working and not dogma. You can't be like, you know what, Facebook or like, YouTube worked for Paul at Manscaped. I'm going to spend money on Paul. People come up to me and they're like, hey, Facebook worked for you guys. How should I get Facebook to work for me? And I'm like, look, Facebook worked for us. What worked for us almost certainly will not work for you. We had a specific use case. We were on there at a different time than Facebook is today. And we were spending a lot of resources on Facebook. For you guys, the content that you have and the cheeky humor is much more amenable to video than it may be to like a quick mobile photo. And so it's just a different channel that works. And like people cannot get caught up on the dogma of others. They have to call audibles when they get to the line, see what's working, and spend their time and resources there.
Absolutely.
What did you guys fail at? So certainly it sounds, and maybe this is maybe fail is a bad word. At Native, we failed at a ton of stuff, operations for a really long time until we hired a stellar operations person, finance forever. What did you guys fail at? Certainly not doing the cheeky marketing was tough. Did you guys have operational supply issues? Because these things can't be easy to, it's not like with deodorant, you want to make more, you probably can do it in a week. You need a week of heads up, maybe 2 weeks. These are, hardware components that cannot be made in a day or 2 days. It's not mixing ingredients together. Well, I mean, some of your products are, but a lot of them aren't. What were the things that you guys struggled with to make the business a success?
Absolutely, right? So, I mean, I'll answer it in a kind of an all-encompassing way. Like if you're in software and SaaS, then you don't have to worry about making stuff, right? You gotta worry about having enough servers, but now there's clouds. We don't have to worry about that anymore either, right? So that's why software can be so lucrative if you get the right win. But for hard and physical products and operations, supply chain, it's a lot of work. So if you're gonna ask me, I'm exactly with you. Like we failed at operations. We failed multiple times at operations. Meaning,
what was give me an example of a disaster you guys had?
Disaster. So,
or one of the things that you failed at in operations specifically.
Yeah. So we were on a run rate. We had projected inventory for the entire Q1, right? We bought it. We have it in stock. It was November. We're like, well, we're good. And we bought so much inventory. We're good for the next quarter. Well, this is November, and we're like, we're good until April, and that's how much inventory we had. By December 16th, it sold out, all inventory, and we're like, oh crap! It was crazy. Everyone and our families were in the warehouse packing, new inventory to send out. Um, so that was definitely a failure. So we ship late to our customers, which means they weren't happy with us. That means that's a fail for us. And we want to
Sure.
delight our customers all the time. Um, and that really that sucked. And that didn't go away, by the way. Like that
Yeah.
happens all the time, all the
Yeah.
time. Like when you're scaling, um, you can never predict how it like how Stern would do a read. Things would just pop, and influencers would launch their videos. Things would just pop, and it's just really difficult to manage all the channels because now we're omni-channel, right? So we're not just a subscription, we're not just a D2C company. Where
Sure.
we got Amazon, we got D2C, we got international, and we got retail. So now we're working with a lot of all of our retail partners. You're planning with them months and months. Like retail is a different beast. It's not D2C. You're planning a year in advance at all times.
Yeah, I think I didn't understand how hard it would be until Native got into retail. Like, we scaled. We had the same problems you did in terms of like running out of inventory. In 2015, we were making 500 units of deodorant a week. By 2017, we were making 21,000 units a day, and we were still like selling out. Like, if you bought your deodorant on a Thursday, it was either made the day before or the day after. It was like it's not like we had a lot of inventory. But once you sell into Target and Walmart and like large brick and mortar stores, their first order could be 300,000 units or 20,000, 50,000 units, and all of a sudden the just in time inventory that you had always been reliant on is no longer sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets really difficult as your SKU starts to expand also.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about some of the retailers that you guys are in. You guys are in Target today. Any other retailers?
We're in Target, Best Buy, and we're really going to focus on Target and Best Buy because we feel that that's where our audience lives. We have a lot of great retail partners, but we're gonna for the time being, at least for 2020, we're really going to focus on Target and Best Buy.
And does your online site make up the majority of your sales, or do Target and Best Buy make up the majority of your sales?
No, D2C web e-commerce makes up the majority of our sales.
And is there like cyclicality to the business? It's really interesting that you said by December 16th you had sort of sold out. I would imagine that people are buying this product for Christmas. Is there another bump in sales, for instance, right before Valentine's Day?
Um, Yeah, Valentine's Day, Father's Day, any gift giving holiday, we see a bump
Yeah,
because that's when women buy us gifts for men. And then of
yeah,
course holidays, right? That's when we women really buy as gifts for men. But then
yeah,
men are also spending on themselves.
yeah.
So Q4 is definitely huge. Just like any other e-commerce company, Q4 is huge for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the Q4 is like for native, it was actually probably one of the worst quarters. In part because like you tend to wear more deodorant in the summer when it's hotter out,
Hmm.
as opposed to the winter when it's cold out. And some people give deodorant as gifts. In fact, a lot of people do a lot more than I suspected. But like if I gave you a deodorant as a gift, I think you'd be like, well, this is nice, but like, okay, this is like a pretty mediocre gift. I mean, if I gave you a package of Manscaped, it'd be a very different product. Like it's obviously a higher price point and a great like a much nicer gift. I wonder if
Absolutely.
men ever accuse like men who get this as a gift from their female partners. I wonder if they ever accuse them of being like, this is a gift for yourself. Like when I buy lingerie for you, it's a gift for me. This is a gift for yourself. I wonder if that
We,
ever
we haven't
happens.
polled our customers, but
Yeah, yeah,
that might be the case. But we have a lot of unboxing experience that people unboxing reactions on Instagram and TikTok. That's been pretty funny.
yeah. Did you work your way up when it came to influencer advertising? Did you start at like micro influencers and work your way up to like A-list celebrities, or were you like, what, let's go big right out of the gate and get the Kim Kardashians or Tom Brady's of the world to try this product?
We still haven't gone with celebrities. Like we have not tapped any celebrities yet. So we're talking, but
Yeah,
we went with amazing influencers. So our first influencer that we ever brought on was Jose Zubiga of Teaching Men's Fashion. Um, he's phenomenal. The dude knows his stuff. He's just he really knows men's hygiene and grooming. Um, and so we tapped him as one of our first influencers, and we still work very closely with him. to this day.
So I guess like was your budget right away going after maybe the celebrities is a bad example. Was your budget right away sort of saying, hey, let's put 10,000 or 50,000 or $100,000 to test among different influencers to see what works and what doesn't? Or were you like, I'm ready to go with an influencer that has 500,000 people that may not be an A-list celebrity, but it's certainly a large Instagram celebrity?
Yes. So, but I think if you're going to test the influencer market, testing micro influencers will give you a really bad data, because there's just not enough reach, right?
Yeah,
You got to test with enough reach to have, it's like you're sampling, right? The more data you have, the better
sure.
results, the better data you're gonna, the better you can conclude on your data, right? So, I think at that time Jose had like 4 million followers or on YouTube, and we
Yeah.
felt that was the right amount for us to really do a good test.
Wow. All right. So you're looking for guys who are already like rather large on YouTube, but before
Yeah.
you spend money there. And is that still the case? Are you still sort of focusing on those people that have a million plus, or are you willing to go down now to people who have 10,000 plus subscribers?
Now our influencer team evaluates each influencer potential influencer partner, and what we evaluate for primarily is authenticity. And
Yeah.
like if you've got 30,000 followers or 30,000 fans or whatever that is, on each of these different platforms, and in your Instagram, all you're doing is pushing product, that you're not the right influencer for us.
Yeah.
We want you to actually test our product, really use it and be a fan of it, right? Because that authenticity comes out because we as a brand really value our authenticity. We want to have a really authentic voice, and that's really important to our brand.
And so, how do female influencers sort of project that authenticity? Is it sort of talking about, um, their partners, or how do female, users project that authenticity?
Well, it depends. Usually, it's the way that they do it is it depends on which platform, right? So on Instagram, they're just taking pictures of it as
Yeah.
endorsing it, and many times they're taking pictures with a partner, as like you guys, because
Yeah.
Instagram is a very photo based
Sure.
platform, whereas on YouTube, it's mostly couples, right? It's the if it's a woman Instagram or a female Instagram, they would pair up with their partner, right? And talk about the product, because there's so many ways you can talk about this product, right?
Yeah.
Men can talk about how great it is, how it doesn't hurt you, how it's the right tool for the job, right? And how much better it makes them feel. Women talk about it as, hey, you give this to your men, and it makes them feel much better. It makes
Yeah.
you like it more, and so
Yeah. Sure.
we leave it up to them to kind of put their own spin on it.
Gotcha. Okay, we're almost out of time, so I just want to ask a couple more questions. The business has changed dramatically since you went from that serious advertising, and it was you and Ryan sort of refreshing YouTube to today. You're sponsoring for the NFL teams and NASCAR teams, and that's pretty amazing. Where is it like? What is your goal with the business? I think that like do you want to work here for 20 years? Is there an exit strategy in the net, like, within 5 years, or like like where do you want to go with the business? This is like the business that you've created is right in the wheelhouse of a lot of CPG companies, right? It's almost like there's a lot of competition for the Gillettes of the world from the Harrys and Dollar Shave Clubs of the world. This is like in the same industry, but going after a very different type of category or niche. And you're uniquely positioned and sort of one of the few companies in that space. What do you want to do?
Yeah, the way that we think about that is, we never, like, or I personally never create or build a business, for the sole purpose of exiting, with that in mind. I just feel like if you create a successful business that transcends, fads, or that can be multi-generational, that's a potential to be multi-generational, um, then the potential acquirers just come. It's natural. So that's kind of how we think about it. Let's build a really successful business. And so when you look back at in the last 40, 50 years, um, there aren't many brands that are able to, be multi-generational, right? I mean, you look at like Head and Shoulders. They've
Sure.
generations upon generations, right? Gillette, generations upon generations. Pantene, there aren't that many brands that are able to actually do that.
You've
And
mentioned all Procter and Gamble brands. They're gonna love that.
no, I mean there's a whole bunch, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
Unilever
Yeah.
brands also, right? Um, but there's not that many that actually have the unit economics to be able to transcend. What I mean by that is it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to build a brand. It is really expensive to build a brand. And if you're trying to sell a shampoo in which, at retail, and you're trying to build a business that way, there's no way you have enough margin to actually build a brand, right? Because you don't want to take 20, 30 years to build a brand, right?
Sure.
You want to be able to spend $50 million on marketing, right? And then grow that to $100 million on marketing for 5 years, 6 years, right? And really have a global brand, and then you start harvesting. I mean, that's kind of how we see it, right? You have to spend the money up front. You have to pay your dues, right? And build that brand, really understand your audience, create amazing products within those 5 to 6, 7 years, and then after that, you can really start harvesting. So that's kind of how we see building a brand. We believe that with our unit economics, because I mean, we recoup the CAC on the first time sale. So beyond anything else, we're
You're
very
profitable
fortunate.
on first unit sale.
We're profit on first unit sale. So we're able
Wow.
to recycle that cash very, very quickly. Um, so that's how we've been able to scale so quickly without any institutional funding, right? So I think there's not that many companies that are able to do that, and
There's
because of
virtually
that,
no companies that are able to do that, especially that, like, there's companies that are able to do that that get to $4 or $5 million in revenue. Virtually no companies are able to do that at $50 million in revenue. That's why the Aways and Allbirds of the world have raised capital.
yeah, yeah, we're very fortunate that we're able to get beyond nine figures
Yeah.
in revenue without institutional capital, and to have that kind of unit economics. So that allows us. So we believe that that really helps us, be multi generational. We're going to grow this thing. We're launching internationally, so we're already in Australia, Canada, and UK. We'll be in all of Europe, and within the next 3 to 5 years, be a truly global brand. And then it's all for harvesting.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting beyond that is, the way that we think about it is we're purely incremental, Moise. There's no portfolio company in groin care. Like, we're probably the last frontier in male grooming.
Agreed. Yeah, it's really amazing when, like, it's not like you're competing with Gillette. You're in the same category, and we're a P&G and acquirer of Manscaped. You would sit within their grooming category likely, but like it's not like you're cannibalizing Gillette sales.
Exactly. We if anything, we can help it, right?
Yeah.
We're truly incremental to the top line revenue, right? And if you look at men's hygiene in general, it's definitely growing, but it's not growing as fast as our category.
Yeah. Yeah, and not only is it growing, like, I mean, your category is primarily growing because of you. I think that, like, people rarely realize that. Like, when Native launched into Target, we grew their deodorant category something like 8% or 10% the first year, and rarely do, Target hadn't seen that in a really long time. The men's, below the waist grooming category isn't growing quickly, and you're riding those coattails. You're the reason that it's growing quickly.
We're seeing very similar data with Target also. Great partner, great to be working with them. They're
Love
phenomenal.
Target.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love Target. They're just phenomenal partners. But we're seeing very similar things with them. Like, this category hasn't been innovated, and it's a brand new category. And we
Yeah.
got lucky with the name Manscaped that we defined the category.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic name. Okay, one last question, because I put on Twitter, I said, I was interviewing you for a podcast. What should I ask you? And someone from your own team actually asked me to ask you this. And they said, have Paul guess how many gallons of boba tea the Manscaped team has consumed in total. Do you want to make a guess?
So, so the reason behind this is my wife loves boba. She's like addicted to boba. So she got the entire company addicted to boba. So I would say many hundreds of gallons of boba.
Okay, if you had to give me a number, because I'm gonna tweet at this guy and be like, "Hey, is this right or wrong?"
I would say, oh, man, because we order boba almost every day. I don't know. I gotta be like 120 gallons.
Okay, no, it's definitely more than 120 gallons. If you order boba every day, that's probably like 18 ounces. There's 70 people on the team. Probably 40 of them are getting boba. No, it's gonna be
Yeah,
more than 100
our
gallons.
boba budget is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
That's a great like line item to have in a budget when you're like doing a P&L and sort of showing it to your board. You're like, this is how much we're going to spend on boba this quarter.
Yeah.
Paul, this was fantastic. Really love, that I really love this conversation. I think aside from one of the things that I've realized about you is that aside from having this incredible vision for the company and sort of understanding where you fit within the CPG space, you also have these humble origins, and you have like the perspective you still remember the perspective you had when you launched the business and were struggling, trying to get the right messaging out, trying to understand, how to get production up and like understand what entrepreneurs are going through when they're still much smaller businesses. I feel like very few people have that perspective, and it's so refreshing to hear, because I think that a lot of people who are building 2-3 million or who are at a $2-3-4 million run rate, don't necessarily want to talk about stuff that I brought up, which was like, how do you think about budget? You go back and you're like, look, budget is what we think about today. The first 2 years, we called audibles at the line every time we went up there. And that was really great. I love how you mentioned that, because it makes me realize that sometimes I've forgotten what it was like to be in the trenches, and makes me miss those days. So appreciate you sort of bringing that up and having that like, in the trenches type of mentality. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I think deep down at heart, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'll always be an entrepreneur. I think it's a special breed, and I celebrate all entrepreneurs out there, because it takes guts, to go out there and to sacrifice every single day, to follow your dreams. It's not easy.
Couldn't agree more with that. It takes a ton of guts. You got to stand up to your family and your friends who are, certainly at my age, are like, lawyers and are making a lot of money and have families. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to put everything on the line. So have a ton of respect for those entrepreneurs, and have a ton of respect for the business and you too.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Paul. This was fantastic. Really appreciate your time. Congratulations on all the success. Super excited. After all of this, it also makes me realize how excited I am as an investor in Manscaped. I feel like when you said all this, I'm like, oh, fantastic. My investment's doing really well. So thanks again for all the time and for taking my money. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm excited to see what your next project's going to be. So
Me too. I don't know what it'll be. Hopefully once this COVID stuff dies down, I'll think of something. Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it.